Revenge films.
My name is Kelly. This is a story that starts from the time back when I was a high school student. Back then, when I told my parents that I wanted to go to college, I was met with disdain. They told me that the only way that I would be able to go to college was...
If you're going to get scholarships, or you're going to take out your own student loans, and you're going to get a part-time job to support yourself through school, then sure, go ahead. But we're not going to be spending a single penny on you once you've graduated from high school.
But in reality, I had heard many stories about people getting scholarships or easily getting a student loan to go to college. I also knew people who were working part-time jobs while they went to school, so I didn't see those conditions as that much of a hurdle. I took that as a yes, and I agreed to their conditions and decided that I would go to college. When it came to my grades, I was always a good student, and so I had no trouble with getting into college. Because of my good grades, I was able to get a scholarship, and I also had no problem getting a student loan. I was able to get myself through college, and I enjoyed my college life and graduated with honors. And then, even after I graduated from college, my hard work paid off compared to most people around me. I had a lot of success with job searching. It didn't take me long to land a good job and to secure a future for myself. I felt like this was the beginning of the next chapter of my life. When I went home to tell my parents the happy news that I landed a job, instead of celebrating with me, they told me,
"Now that you have a full-time job, from now on you need to start sending us money every month. That's your duty as our daughter."
Up until now, I had been working a part-time job and was trying to save as much as I could, but every last penny of those paychecks went towards my college fees. Now that I got a full-time job, this was going to be the first time that I would be able to have some money to spend freely, and I was really looking forward to it. So when my mom said that to me, it threw me off. At first I said no, but my parents insisted that I have to send them money every single month, and they refused to let me go unless I agreed to their conditions. And not only that, but the amount was much larger than I expected. They demanded that I send them $800 every single month. I told them that that would be impossible, especially when my initial starting salary was low. But they said that this was the norm and that everybody was doing it. They said that I needed to give back to them for raising me for the last 22 years. And they said that this was how the world works. I had just gotten a job for the first time, and because I didn't know what was wrong or right, I ended up losing to their pressure and agreeing. I was a new college graduate starting my very first job, and my salary was barely going to be enough for me to support myself. If I were to send my parents $800 a month and also pay for my own rent and my gas, electricity, and water bills, along with all of my food and any other living expenses, even though I was finally starting a full-time job for the first time in my life, I was going to be left with even less money for myself than when I was a college student. That's why I begged my parents to at least lessen the amount that they were demanding of me every month so that I could also survive, but their response was,
Are you kidding me? Stop messing around. You should be glad that we asked for so little. Don't you realize that everyone else around us has kids that are sending way more than that to their parents? You're the only one complaining and asking to send so little. You should be ashamed of yourself.
And they simply yelled at me. It was true that my parents did in fact raise me and got me through high school, but when I thought about the fact that for the rest of my life, even as a working adult, I was going to have to be strung along by my parents like this, I was devastated. This wasn't the new chapter that I had imagined for myself. And then I started living by myself and working full-time, but my expenses increased way more than before. Because of my work, I started driving around in a car as well. In order to pass the vehicle inspection, I knew that I needed to save more, so I was saving little by little every month from my salary for that. Because I barely had any money, it took a long time, but I was finally starting to save up enough. That was until one day my mom suddenly showed up at my front door and barged into my house. And then she invited herself into my house and said that she would help me clean now that she was there. But because I was always pretty clean and I liked to keep the place tidy, I was cleaning regularly, and so I told her she didn't need to do anything. But without paying any mind to me, my mom started going around to every corner of my apartment and brushing around. But I immediately thought that something was strange about it. She said that she was coming in to help clean my apartment, but my mom started opening up every single drawer and every cabinet as though she was looking for something. And then when she eventually found my bank book and seal, she grabbed it and looked inside.
"Hey, Kelly, I knew you were sending so little every single month, and this is where you were stashing it all. How dare you hide this money from us?"
She said to me, but I snapped right back at her. That's money that I'm saving up for the vehicle inspection of my car. Now give me my bank back.
Excuse me, you really think that you can tell a lie like that and it's going to pass? I knew it, you greedy girl. You were hiding all this money from us. Thank goodness I came out of my way to come and check for myself. I'm going to be taking all of this money back with me. You need to give back to your parents for raising you all these years. That's a child's duty. And before you start blaming me, you should know that this is your own fault for sending us such little money every month. You should be ashamed of yourself.
As she said that, my mom forcefully took my bank book and seal and stormed out of the house. I tried to stop her, but she shook me off and ran away with my most valuable items. All this time, I had been working tooth and nail and saving up what little I could for my vehicle inspection, and she took all of that from me. And I was at a loss. Every month, I was cutting down on my food expenses. I wasn't spending any extra money on myself, and I was living in my apartment without using the air conditioner and barely ever using the heater either. I had finally saved up a decent amount of money, and if I had to start saving that up again from scratch, it meant that I would have to live an even more meager life than before. I was devastated, but I felt like there was nothing I could do about it. I went back to work until one day, when I was having my lunch at the office, one of my colleagues came over to talk to me.
Hey, Kelly, wait a minute. Is that all you're eating for lunch?
She asked me that because what I was eating was one rice ball that wasn't even 2 inches in diameter. My colleague continued to ask me what was wrong because she knew that even though I had just graduated from college and was a new hire, I should have enough salary to eat a decent lunch. So she asked me if I had just wasted a lot of money on something. Without thinking, I ended up dumping all my concerns on her. But then when my colleague heard my story, she was shocked and she said,
What is that? Don't you think that's crazy? I understand giving back to your parents is important, but, we just graduated from college and we just got our first jobs. We have our hands full trying to take care of ourselves. What do you mean you're sending them $800 a month?
But everybody is sending more than I am back to their parents, right?
Okay, listen, yeah, there might be some people who are sending money back home to their parents, but I can assure you that it's not $800 or $1,000 or anything like that. Even though we're barely making any money to begin with, well, it's barely enough for us to support ourselves. If you're sending that much home, then how can you survive?
After she said that, my colleague then continued on to explain to me just how ridiculous my situation was, and that I've been brainwashed for all these years by my parents. When I heard that, it opened my eyes, and I decided that I should go and speak to my parents about it. And I went back to my family home that weekend to confront them. As I was on my way there, I ran into a woman in the neighborhood who had a shop on the main street. The woman was running a small croquet shop on the shopping street, and she had been running that little shop in the same location ever since I was a little girl. I knew her and her husband well. I knew that her husband loved betting on horse races, and any time he would get a small allowance from his wife, he would happily run straight to the horse races to bet that money. When the woman saw me, she said to me,
Just the other day, I saw your mom and dad, and apparently they lost a whole lot of money betting on the horse races. I asked them where they were getting the money from to bet that much, but they said that they would be okay because you were sending them money every month, and so they still had some change to rely on. That is truly amazing, Kelly. You are a good girl, but you should tell them to be careful with their gambling habits. Otherwise, they're only going to get into more trouble.
However, this was actually the first time I was ever hearing that my father and my mother were gambling. And not only that, but even though I was working extra hard and I was cutting down on my own food, even going some days without eating anything at all in order to be able to send them money, they were going off and enjoying themselves by gambling and recklessly spending a lot of money. And then when they lost a lot of money, they thought that they could just rely on me to continue supporting them. When I heard that, I could feel the blood boiling inside of my veins. However, I knew that the lady who was telling me all of this did nothing wrong, so I tried to act like this was all normal. I simply replied, "What am I to do with my silly parents? I'll be sure to warn them." And I acted normal and went on my way. But then I decided I was going to confront my parents about this when I got home, and I headed straight there. As soon as I walked into the house, my dad raised his voice at me.
So, you were hiding money from us, weren't you? Even though $800 a month is such a small amount to be giving us. If your mom hadn't gone there to get the money from you, we were about to continue on the rest of our lives being tricked by you. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's a given that you should be giving back to us for everything that we've done for you until now. If that's all you're going to be sending us, then you may as well be sending us nothing.
When he said that, I quickly replied, "All right, fine then. I'll stop sending you money at all."
Wait, what?
Because this time I fully understood that even if I send any amount of money to you guys, that it's all a waste anyway.
What the hell are you saying? How many times do we have to tell you that sending money to your parents is what every child should be doing?
But you're just going to be using all of that money on gambling at the horse races, right? I heard it all from that lady at the croquet shop, and apparently you lost a lot of money the other day, money that I worked so hard to earn and send to you.
Well, we just went to blow off some steam. Anyway, that's not anything for you to stick your neck into. What we do with the money is our choice.
But as the person that's sending you the money that you're spending on that, surely I have every right to say something about it. Do you have any idea how hard I'm working to save money just so that I can send enough money to you guys every month? I don't have any money to spend freely on myself. I barely even have enough money to eat proper meals every day. I am freezing in my own home just to save any extra cash to survive.
You need to get back to your parents for raising you so that you can even be working right now. You better stop running your mouth.
By the way, I asked my colleague, and she told me that she has never seen any fresh college graduate sending $800 home to their parents. That's a ridiculous amount. Not even people who have been working for years send that much back to their parents.
Well, that's because all of your friends are idiots who don't treat their parents right. Anyway, it's your duty to be sending us money every single month. And if you try to stop, we're gonna barge into your company.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Do you have any idea how much we've had to sacrifice in order to raise you? Who do you think you are? That's why your fate is to support us until the day that you die. That's what you were born to do.
When the two of them said that to me, I realized that I didn't know what to do about this by myself and that I was helpless against my parents alone. So I decided to go to my grandparents' place and explain the situation to them, and I asked them to please help me. But then, unexpectedly, when my grandparents heard what I told them, they were furious.
Those parasites taking our precious granddaughter's money and trying to live off it? It should be a parent's duty to be raising their child. What do they mean give back to them for that? And if they ever sent us a single penny themselves, we're not going to forgive them for this.
That's what my grandfather said, and then he kindly told me that I had nothing to worry about and that they would take care of it for me. And then the next day, to my shock, my mother came back to my house, but this time she was crying and dropped down on her knees.
Because of you, my dad was furious with me, and he's saying that he's going to kick us out of the house. We need you to go and talk to him for us and tell him that everything is fine and stop him, please.
The reason that my mom was crying was because the house that my parents were living in right now was originally my grandfather's house, and right now they were actually just renting it from him without paying any rent. And my grandpa was saying that he was going to kick my parents out of that house after this incident.
My dad is saying that he's not going to let us live in that house until we've paid you back 3 times the amount of money that you've given us for the trouble that we caused you. So just go to Grandpa and say that you forgave us, okay? And then everything will be okay.
That's what my mom started saying to me, but I remained logical. Why should I have to do that? Thanks to my grandpa, I was about to get back more money than I had sent them in the first place. So why would I try to stop that? And so I replied to my mom, "Are you kidding me? Make sure you pay it back, and exactly 3 times the amount as promised. Until then, why don't you live in an old, small, run-down apartment and try to save up some money? Get a job and work to earn that money, like I've been doing for all these years." When I said that to her, my mom turned completely pale and she couldn't say anything back to me. The house that my grandfather had was a pretty amazing house, but in the end, my parents were kicked out of that house and it was decided that they would have to send money back to me. Of course, after that, there was no way that either of them would be able to gamble when they didn't even have a place to live. On top of that, my grandfather started saying that he was going to take the entire inheritance that was allocated for my mother and give all of that to me if they didn't fulfill their promise. My mother seemed furious about the situation, but she didn't have any hands left to play, and she had no choice but to abide by what her father was saying, otherwise there was no way that she could survive. My mother was devastated and furious, but I didn't care about that. From now on, neither my mother nor my father would be able to say anything towards me, nor would they even be able to lift their heads towards me. But that was perfect for me, and I was so grateful to my grandfather. I had no intention of disagreeing with my grandfather at this point, not when everything was finally going in my favor. And I had realized at this point already that I didn't need my parents in order to live my life. If anything, I realized that I was much better off without them. From now on, I plan on working hard, living my life, and spending my money for my own happiness. I'm Molly, an ordinary housewife. I live happily with my husband Don and 5-year-old daughter, except for one problem. There was a woman named Barbara in our neighborhood whose daughter went to the same preschool as my daughter. She tended to brag and show off just about everything to other mothers, and we didn't like her very much. I lived close to her and couldn't ignore her entirely, so I did my best not to be her friend or foe. Barbara wanted to be the best of everything, and she was envious when she saw someone who seemed above her. Don works at a foreign-affiliated company, and he has a high income, so she sort of hated me. Despite how she sees us, we're an ordinary family and not surrounded by luxury. If there was one thing that stood out with my family, it was that Dawn drove a fancy car. When she saw our car in the garage, she would say, "Do you have to show it off?" I didn't like this, but I didn't want to argue, so I just ignored it. One day when I picked up my daughter at preschool, I saw her tell other mothers that her husband bought a new car, and she stopped me when I was about to leave.
Can I park my car in your garage tonight?
I told her Don needed to park his car in there, but she insisted.
Come on, it's just one night.
And I said no to her again firmly and left. After we stopped by for grocery shopping and arrived home, I couldn't believe what I saw. There was Barbara's car in our garage. I called her immediately and she said,
I'm going to use your garage for a while. Thanks.
And hung up the phone. When Don got home at night, he stormed in after he saw a stranger's car in our garage. So I told him what had happened and he suggested we wait and see. So I said okay, but she didn't move her car the next day, and after that, I was ready to call the police, but Don said the same thing. Let's wait and see just a little more. I told him that she wouldn't listen to me, and I didn't want her to bother us with this anymore. And he said,
My company will soon undergo personnel changes, and we might move. We may not have to deal with this in a rush.
So I agreed with him, but I was still bothered and had to tell Barbara many more times to move her car out of our garage. Since she used our garage without our permission, Don had to park his car on the street. It was outrageous. But Don didn't seem to feel the same way as I did. After a little while, Don was transferred and we were to move out of the house just as he said we would. The next destination was Sweden. Once we got there, he will be in the position for at least 5 years, so we invited our family for dinner before we moved out. My parents would drive to get here, so I had to have our garage available. I explained this to Barbara about my parents coming a long way, but she still didn't move her car out. I sent her a text numerous times and called her. She ignored all of them. Up until that point, Don was tolerant, but he was finally irritated. As a result, my parents had to park in the nearby parking garage and we paid for it. We were busy packing, but I couldn't leave this place without complaining to her. So Don and I went to see Barbara on the weekend. We rang the doorbell and Barbara answered the door.
Why are you here?
So I said we came to talk about her car, and she whispered, "Shh, don't
talk so loud. My husband can hear you. He's home today, and it's not a good time for us."
She then disappeared into the house. We didn't have time to do this when we were busy getting ready to move out of the country, so I rang the bell again. This time, she brought her husband to the door.
"Honey, these people are harassing me."
Yeah, I don't know what you brought here, but my wife doesn't like it. We're spending the time with family, so please leave.
He didn't even listen to us and shut the door. When we got home, Dawn said,
We have no choice but to resort to the last resort.
on our moving day, even though I contacted her many times and told her about our moving, she didn't even show up, leaving her car in our garage. When the moving company loaded up our stuff, we were about to leave as well, and she still didn't show. Then Don finally took action. He closed the garage door and locked it inside. Don was expected to be relocated for 5 to 10 years, and we arranged for our relative who lived close by to become a house sitter during our absence. "She can't get her car out, you know," I said to him, and he said,
That's the idea.
We left, boarded our flight, and moved to a foreign country. Barbara called me a few times, but we were too busy to deal with her. Three days later, finally, I had a moment to answer the call from her, and she was furious.
"You have to tell me your realtor for your house. You must have put it up for sale."
I told her we didn't plan to sell the house because we'd move back here after Dawn's overseas posting.
"You're kidding, right? Where's the key to your garage? I need to use my car."
So I said that I had the key with me.
"Huh? How could you do this to me? I am calling the police."
So I had to remind her that I had told her not to park her car in our garage, and I repeated the same thing 100 times, and she still wouldn't listen to me and completely ignored me, including the final warning. So if someone gets charged, it would be her. Then she said nothing and hung up the phone. A few hours later, I got a call from the local police in America. Barbara tried to break our garage door after our conversation. My neighbor called the police, and Barbara was arrested on the spot. My relative, who was to be a house sitter, had a copy of the garage key, so I asked for her help so Barbara's husband could take the car out. Barbara told him that she rented the monthly parking garage, but in reality, she used our garage for free, and she used that money for herself. Her husband was furious to learn all this. The story of her arrest didn't take long to spread among the mothers at the preschool. Her husband divorced her and took his child. Barbara was left all alone. Since she was a housewife, she had no money, and it was difficult for her to find work, especially with her arrest record. She sent me emails and texts saying,
"You're wealthy. Please lend me some money. You played a part in this."
So I simply said, "If you're threatening me, I'll call the police." After this, it stopped. I later heard that Barbara was working at the factory and living in the company dorm. But her husband wouldn't let her see their child. It's all her own doing, so it's a natural outcome. We returned to our house in America after 5 years. My daughter was happy to see her old friends, who are all now in 4th grade. The house where Barbara lived before now has a new tenant, and we are acquainted. I don't ever want to get involved in that kind of trouble. You can't be too careful with your neighbors. My name is Samantha. Even as I became an adult, I was living together with my mother. It was always just the two of us until I eventually got a boyfriend. His name was Kevin. Kevin and I quickly became engaged, and we had plans to get married pretty soon. But given this day and age, even if we were to have a wedding, we realized that there would be a lot of guests that wouldn't be able to make it to the ceremony. So we decided that we could wait to host a wedding ceremony once things in the world had calmed down. We had a small courthouse marriage and submitted our marriage certificates first. At the time, Kevin and I were living separately from each other, but given that we were going to be getting married, we obviously had to discuss our living arrangements and started talking about what we would do. That was when Kevin said to me that he would be happy to live together with me and my mom. I was surprised. Normally, I heard that most people wouldn't want to live with their own parents, much less their spouse's parents. That's why when he's made that suggestion to me, I was both very shocked, but also simultaneously really happy about it. My father had passed away a couple of years ago, and since then, I've been living together with my mom. We supported each other, so even after I got married, I always knew that I wanted to live close to her, no matter how old I became. But I never could have imagined that even after I got married, I would be able to live together with my mom. So for that, I was extremely grateful to Kevin. And so, not long after that, Kevin and I became happily married to each other. I thought things were going to be great. However, as soon as Kevin and I got married and he moved into our house, Kevin started treating my mother extremely poorly. In the beginning, I thought maybe he was just going through an adjustment period, but one day when I came home from work, I saw my mother standing outside the front door of our house. She looked upset, and when I asked her what on earth she was doing out there, she told me the most unbelievable story. To my disbelief, she said that Kevin's parents were inside of our house right now. That wasn't the shocking part, but apparently Kevin said that my mom being there would cause his parents to have to be mindful of her, and they wouldn't be able to relax in the house, and so he kicked her out of her own home. But my mom was too kind. She tried to understand how Kevin and his parents felt, and so she said she obliged. At first, she went to cafes and tried to kill time outside so that she wouldn't be at home in their way. However, even after over 2 hours when she came back home, Kevin's parents were apparently still lounging inside of our house. And so she had been waiting outside like this for more than an hour. I couldn't believe my ears. How can something this ridiculous happen when this was her house to begin with? I was furious with my husband's words and actions, so I stormed into the house with my mom and I politely asked my in-laws to leave for the day. As soon as they were gone, I confronted my husband. What on earth is going on here? You do realize that this is my mom's house to begin with, and yet you just kicked my mom out of her own house? What do you think you're doing? But then my husband showed no signs of regret and instead snapped back at me.
Because if your mom is here, then obviously my parents can't relax and treat this like their own home. Plus, it's not like it's the middle of summer or the middle of winter right now, so it's not like she's gonna have any issues waiting outside. So what's the big deal?
My husband said that like there was no problem with it, and I was shocked. But I explained to him that he better not let something like this happen ever again, and I went back to my mom and I formally apologized to her for my husband. Because my mom was so kind, she kept telling me that I didn't need to worry about it, but to me, this was unforgivable. This house was left behind by my father for my mother after he spent so many years working hard to support our family. And yet I couldn't believe that my husband would kick my mom out of that house when he's the one that moved in to live with us. I thought it would be a one-time incident, but I was wrong. Not long after that, my husband invited his parents over to our house once again. And at that time, because I had given him such a hard time previously for kicking my mom out of the house, he didn't kick her out. However, instead he started treating my mom practically like she was a maid. He made my mom start cooking for his parents, and he made her make tea for them, ordering her around the house like a slave. On top of that, when I had to go to work on the weekend one day, I had left for work on the Sunday to go to the office. Apparently, Kevin had his parents over, and he had tried to get them to leave the house before I came home. I ran into my in-laws as they were coming out of my house, but I was shocked to see that my mother-in-law was carrying a familiar purse. I don't mean to be rude, but isn't that my mother's purse? I recognized that purse immediately, because when my father was still alive, that was a purse that he had gifted to my mother when they went on their last trip together. That's why I had to ask her, but then my mother-in-law's response was,
"Oh, you mean this thing? I saw it in your house and I thought it was beautiful, and then my son said that I could take it, so I did."
She then tried to keep walking off with it like it belonged to her, so I stopped her. "No, you can't do that. That was a gift from my late father to my mother just before he passed away." And I grabbed the purse back out from her hands. My mother-in-law looked angry as she stormed away from the house. That night, once again, I ended up in a battle against my husband. I had spoken about that purse to Kevin before and explained the importance of it to him and how much my mom treasured that bag. But then Kevin said,
Oh, come on, please. You don't have to be so annoying about it. I'll get a replacement tote bag at the dollar shop for you or whatever.
And that was his response. As for why he just handed it to his mom, I was angry, but this time Kevin snapped at me.
Oh, shut up. Don't you realize that I'm the one doing you a favor by living together with you and your mom? What's so wrong with me inviting my parents over to see me?
And he was raising his voice at me. It may be true that my husband agreed to move in with my mother and I was grateful for that. But if I knew that things were going to end up like this, I never would have wanted to live with him. And at this point, I was deeply regretting it. Also, I started to think that it would be better for my mom if my husband and I moved out of the house already. Plus, I was starting to rethink my entire relationship with my husband. But it was right around that time that the most unforgivable incident happened that would change everything. On that day when I came home from work, I noticed a very large moving truck parked outside my front door. And there was a moving contractor there swiftly packing boxes of things into the trunk. I was shocked, and when I ran into the house, I saw my mom there panicking and not knowing what to do. On the other hand was my husband giving orders to the moving contractors, and his parents unpacking boxes of their belongings. Hey, what on earth are you doing?
Well, you know, this house is so spacious, and I thought it was pretty unfair that we only live with your mom when I have parents too. So I decided that my parents are also gonna live here with us.
Wait a minute, you're joking, right? I definitely haven't agreed to this, and more than anything, you haven't gotten permission from my mom either.
Well, I live here, so as long as I have my permission, then it should be fine.
When I heard those words come out of my husband's mouth, I felt a furious rage boiling inside of me.
Are you kidding me? You need to move all of this stuff immediately.
But when I looked around the house, I noticed that all of my mom's furniture and belongings had already been forcibly stuffed into the tiniest room in the house. And instead, my in-laws' furniture and random items were scattered all throughout the living room of my own mother's house. And within that, the thing that angered me the most and was the straw that broke the camel's back was that they had thrown my father's altar into the back of the storage closet. This house was a pretty old house, but before my father passed away, everything had been remodeled. One of my father's friends had a remodeling and construction company, and for half of what it would normally cost to build a brand new house like this, they had helped us renew the interior of the entire house. Thanks to that, it looks like a brand new house, and it was beautiful. On the opposite side of that, when it came to Kevin's parents, I knew that they were living in the same apartment for years and that it was an old and small apartment. So for them, they must have seen the opportunity to live in my beautiful family home and took that and ran with it. And I knew Kevin welcomed them in with open arms. As I was losing my patience more and more, I glanced over and saw that my in-laws were perched on their couch that they had delivered from their apartment into my house. My mother-in-law opened her mouth and said,
"Ah, and with this we can finally relax in our home. Hey, Samantha, can you go and pour us some tea?"
I want some green tea, so make sure you pour me a different cup. Come on now, hurry up, why don't you get moving?
They were already trying to use me like I was a maid at their service, and like they were the heads of this household. I could barely believe my ears as the anger inside of me stirred even more. I couldn't hold it in anymore, and I snapped at my in-laws as well.
Please, leave. Get out of this house and go back to your home. This house belongs to my mother, and this is her home.
Oh, please, what are you saying? Our son is living here in this house, which means that this house also belongs to my son, and therefore that means it's also our house as well.
That's right. If you have so many complaints about it, Samantha, then why don't the two of you move out already? We've already packed up your belongings for you.
My husband was grinning as he looked at me and said it was like a challenge and I had had enough. I knew there was no point in trying to reason with these people anymore, so I turned around and said, "All right, fine. We'll do just that and we are going to leave. Mom, let's go. Come with me." My mom had been standing there looking upset the entire time, so I stormed out of the house with her. And then I headed straight towards my grandparents' house with my mom. As soon as we got there, we explained the entire situation to them in detail. Of course, my grandparents were furious, and they said that they would do everything in their power to help us get our home back. A few days later, we had finished our preparations, and I went back to my mother's house. But this time, with a group of my relatives with me, when we showed up at the house, my husband looked at me arrogantly and said,
"So So, have you come here to apologize? Do you finally understand that I'm the head of this household now? If you're gonna apologize, then I'll consider letting you live in this house again. But you're gonna get down on your knees and not only apologize, you're gonna promise that you're never gonna talk back to me or my parents like that ever again. Now go on, get down!
He pointed at the ground and tried to look down on me, but I wasn't going to take any of that. Obviously, there's no way that I'm going to be apologizing or that I will ever understand what's wrong with you people. We only came here today to gather our belongings and take everything out of this house. Don't get it twisted.
Huh? Oh, please, don't make me laugh. What are you saying? Everything that's in this house belongs to us now.
Seriously, what is wrong with you? Is your brain just full of weeds and empty fields? You do realize that this house belongs to my mother, and it is legally under her name. This is her private property, and she has every right to the house and her belongings in it. And my mother, who owns this house, has put it up for sale, and we already found a buyer, which means that this house no longer belongs to her, but it definitely doesn't belong to you. And we came here today to get rid of everything that's inside of the house for the new owners. We're going to be taking everything that belongs to my mother and myself, but I don't care what happens to your belongings. Just so you know, starting today, this house no longer belongs to us, and so if you people don't do the same, the contractor's going to come and throw everything away. As soon as I said that, the three of them jumped up off their seats and went pale.
Wait a minute, you're joking, right? This house is ours, isn't it?
Are you kidding me? Stop messing around. You think that you can just do that without our permission and get away with it?
No, you're the one that must be joking. Of course we can do it, and of course it's going to go through. Because this house belongs to my mother, and she has every right to do whatever she wants to do with it. And first of all, up until now, we've had multiple offers to buy this house. Ever since my father passed away, my mom and I also thought it was a little bit too large for the two of us to live alone. But this house was also full of memories of my father, and that's why my mom insisted we keep it, and she wanted to stay here. But if we were going to have to share this house with people like you living in it, and even worse, for people like you to steal this house from us, then we all agreed that we would be better off selling the house, and that's exactly what we did. When I hit him with this reality, suddenly it seemed like my husband finally understood the situation and he started to panic. Kevin completely changed his tune, and this time he started apologizing to me.
Hey, Samantha, wait a minute, please. Come on, I know that we might have gotten a little bit carried away. That was our bad. Sorry about that. I'll apologize. But look, from now on, we can all live happily together as a happy family of 5, right? You guys can just move back in here.
What? What are you talking about? What family of 5 when we're getting a divorce?
What? Did you just say divorce?
Isn't it obvious? Not only did you kick my mother out of her own house, not only did you try to use her as your personal maid to you and your parents, you tried to steal this house from her, and as the cherry on top, you took my father's altar and threw it into the storage closet and destroyed it. After all that, you seriously think that I want to be married to a person like that? Please, there is no way in any universe that I would want to be family with you people. After I said that, I turned to my relatives and I asked for all of their help in gathering up my mom's belongings and my belongings, and my strong relatives carried everything out of the house within minutes. While everybody was packing up during that time, my husband tried to stop them multiple times and asked me to wait, but he was quickly overpowered by my relatives, and eventually he must have realized that he didn't stand a chance. He just stood there in silence next to his parents as they watched us move everything out of the house. Almost immediately after my relatives and I had packed up and left the house, the contractors that we had hired showed up at the front door, and everything that belonged to Kevin and his parents was swiftly rounded up out of the house and thrown away. The house was left completely empty and ready for its new owners. Because Kevin's parents had already let go of their family apartment to move into my mother's house, Kevin no longer had a place to live. Soon after that, he came crying to me, and he started throwing a tantrum that not only did he not have a place to live anymore, but that his parents had also lost their place to live and didn't know where to go. But I truly could not have cared less, nor was it any of my business anymore. We were already divorced, and I wanted nothing to do with them. On the other hand, as for my mother and I, because my mom's house was sold for a very high price thanks to my dad remodeling it while he was still alive, we didn't face any trouble. After my divorce went through, my mother and I were able to move into a new and spacious apartment that was the perfect size for the two of us. I later heard in the rumors through the grapevine that those three had become homeless and that people have seen them sleeping in the park and rummaging through the trash cans to find food to eat. But honestly, I think that was a very fitting place for garbage people like them. I hope they spend the rest of their lives regretting what they did to my mom. One day, my colleague Maria decided to leave the company. Her daughter Millie is undergoing treatment for leukemia, and Maria wanted to stay with her all day. Leukemia is a type of blood cancer which accounts for up to 40% of cancer occurring in children. The cause is unknown. We had a farewell party at work for Maria last month where our boss, Mr. Calhill, asked Maria a highly insensitive question.
Did the leukemia patients become bald because of the drugs?
At the moment, the room froze. Sarah was going to say something just like I was, but Maria grabbed her arm and shook her head and said, "It's okay." Although we didn't say anything back to him, we were enraged by the incident during the entire party. I was anxious and worried that he might say something else to offend Maria, but the party ended with no more chaos. A few days later, Sarah and I were talking in the office about what we should bring for Millie at the hospital. Then Mr. Calhill, who overheard our conversation, said he wanted to come along. We didn't know what to say to him, so I called Maria, worried after that incident at her farewell party. After a pause, Maria said, "It's okay, he can come too. It's just that Millie has just gotten out of the sterile room and only limited things are allowed in her room. No flowers, no plush, and stuffed animals that can attract dust and lint, so you don't have to bring anything." When I told Sarah and Mr. Calhill about this, "We can't bring anything? Oh, that's too bad. Why don't we buy some books for her so she won't get bored?"
Don't bring anything. That saves money.
I think I heard him mutter that, but he soon said,
Yes, let's buy her some books. She'll like them.
He agreed with Sarah, so maybe I was wrong. On Saturday, we saw many children wearing beanies at the hospital. When we visited Millie's room, she welcomed us with a big smile. Sarah and I visited Maria at her home sometimes, so we've known Millie since she was a baby. Millie seemed to be happy to see us. Mr. Calhill was looking around her room and stared at Millie up and down, looking restless. Millie's beanie spoke to us about the hard reality of chemotherapy. Yet Millie was smiling at us and told us about some episodes in the hospital and her treatment. It made me realize this little girl has been fighting the illness with all she has, and I couldn't hold my tears. Sitting next to me, Sarah looked the same. I was caught up in my emotions and I wasn't thinking about Mr. Calhill at the moment. Then suddenly he approached Millie and asked her,
Millie, I suppose you lost your hair because of the treatment. Are you bald now? Can I see it? You're not going to lose anything now.
At the same time, a nurse came in and we all froze. Sarah and I could kill that man right there. The nurse didn't seem to know whether she should say something or throw the man out of the room. But she couldn't do either and just looked irritated. Then it was Millie who cleared away that awkward atmosphere.
Okay, if you take off your wig, I can show you mine.
She said this with a smile that relieved all the tension in the room. The man said,
What are you talking about, little girl? I'm not wearing a wig.
We looked at each other trying hard not to laugh, but Millie seemed she meant it.
But that's a wig. It's slipping off, I can tell. Do you have the same disease as me? Is that why you're wearing a wig? Oh, then we're the same.
We couldn't help but burst out laughing, and now we laughed out loud. Even the nurse seemed to be having a hard time not laughing. Only Mr. Calhill wasn't laughing. But he couldn't yell at a child, and we were in the hospital room. I could see his face turn red. Then he pretended nothing happened and said to Millie,
I'm glad you seem to be doing well, little girl. Well, I have to go now.
and he left the room. Only Millie didn't know what was going on out there, but the three of us couldn't wait for him to leave. Later, we found out that he wanted to come with us out of curiosity. Because of his own issue with his hair, he was curious about the baldness of others. It was still out of the ordinary to visit a child who was fighting a serious illness from that motivation and ask a girl an insensitive question. In short, he's scum, Maria said later. It turned out to be the perfect revenge for him. I didn't think I would see Mr. Calhill again, but I did and had a chance to get back at him unexpectedly. It was great. After this, he got a real punishment from above. After Maria left the office, we got back to our ordinary work life and we had another social dining. We were talking about the incident of Mr. Calhill at Maria's farewell party. Mr. Calhill wasn't there, but unknowingly, Mr. Porter, the president, was sitting near us and overheard our conversation. We heard that Mr. Porter's wife had gone through chemotherapy in the past, and he was sensitive to the subject. Mr. Porter found out that Maria's daughter was undergoing the same treatment as his wife did, and he couldn't think of it as just other people's affairs. He was furious at Mr. Calhill. A child is fighting the illness for life, and that he told the little girl to take off her hat was unthinkable as a human and as an adult. He concluded that Mr. Calhill lacked morals and was not suitable to be a leader, and demoted him. He didn't fire Mr. Calhill, but told him, "The door is open." I saw Mr. Calhill turn pale. As for Millie, it took several months, but she overcame her illness and came home. Sarah and I visited them many times during that time. To my surprise, Mr. and Mrs. Porter also visited Millie to encourage her. Mrs. Porter said to Millie, "It'll be all right. I know you will overcome, because I did it," and handed Millie a bouquet of her favorite flowers.
"Yes, I will. I will fight this. All my friends are waiting for me."
Mr. Porter told Maria,
It'll be all right. She'll be well. Just believe in her and hang on. When Millie is discharged from the hospital, you can come back to our company at any time. There are remote positions as well.
That made Maria cry. Now Maria's back in our office, and Millie went back to school just as she declared. As for that man, Mr. Calhill, after the story of his heartless words to Millie spread like fire in the office, he couldn't stand the cold stares from every direction, and eventually he resigned. I don't know or care about his whereabouts, but I doubt he's capable of normal human relationships wherever he goes next. It's a well-deserved punishment. My name is Kelly Smith. I live together with my husband, Jonathan Smith, and our beautiful daughter, Ashley, who's currently a high school student. To be honest, my husband had a lazy personality. He doesn't try very hard, nor does he care to excel at anything. But my daughter is the opposite of him. Luckily, she's more like me. She's disciplined, puts in the effort, and is working hard in school. Ever since our daughter Ashley was a little girl, she did her best at everything she got her hands on, from studying to after-school activities and sports. As a result of that, even as a senior in high school now, she was able to aim high for a college. She took the entrance exam for one of the most difficult universities, and we were in the midst of eagerly and nervously awaiting the results of her application. I was very grateful to have a great relationship with my daughter, but there was one concern about my family, and that was about my relationship with my mother-in-law, Jonathan's mother, and her harassment towards me. My husband's parents lived in a house really close to our house in the same neighborhood. I didn't mind living so close to my in-laws. However, my mother-in-law had the habit of sneaking into our house frequently and stealing my belongings while I wasn't home. Any time that I would notice that some of my belongings were missing, I would confront my mother-in-law about it, and this was always her response.
Who do you think you are, and who do you think I am? I am your mother-in-law. You married into this family, and you think you're going to complain about what I choose to do?
Her reasoning was always illogical, and instead of showing any sign of regret or apology, she would simply get angry at me, and I didn't know what to do about it. But even though I would try to speak to my husband about it, his response would always be,
What's the big deal? Why are you causing such a fuss over something so little?
and he would brush me off like it was nothing and wouldn't take me seriously. In the beginning, I didn't mind too much that it was little things like my clothing, my makeup, my accessories, and replaceable things like that, but when it started to really bother me was that as my daughter became older, she started stealing my daughter's belongings. I was working full-time outside of the house, and my daughter would be at school like any normal child. So during the day on the weekdays, the house would mostly be left empty. And during that time, without me knowing, my mother-in-law had made a spare key for herself behind my back. And then she would sneak into our house and start stealing our belongings. And every single time that my daughter and I would come home in the evenings, we would notice that our belongings were missing. No matter how many times I told my husband to ask his mom to return the spare key that she made without our permission, he would snap at me.
What's so wrong with my mother having a key to our house? Don't you realize it's for our own sake in case anything were to happen? Just let her keep it.
And he would refuse to listen to our reasoning at all. I was starting to get really tired of my husband and my mother-in-law, when one day, as soon as my daughter came home from school, she went into her bedroom and then came out looking like she was about to start crying. When I asked her what happened, she said that the necklace that my mother had bought for her on her last birthday that she loved was missing. My mother had passed away about 3 years ago, and my daughter said that that necklace was like an heirloom to her. I knew how much she loved it and treasured it. She said that she had always kept the necklace in the case and had stored it safely in the back of one of her drawers. But then when she got home, she saw that that particular drawer was slightly open. When she looked for the necklace, she said that the entire case was missing. I didn't want to assume the worst, so I tried to help my daughter look all around the house for the necklace. But of course, it was nowhere to be found, and both my daughter and I knew that without a doubt, the person behind this had to be my mother-in-law. I was reaching my limit of patience, and I thought I was going to go crazy from the anger. I knew I couldn't stay quiet about this, so I immediately picked up the phone and I called my mother-in-law. Mrs. Smith, where is the necklace? Please give it back immediately. We know you have it. When I said that to her, she said,
Oh, if you're talking about that necklace that was in Ashley's room, I don't have it anymore. I gave it to my friend as a birthday present for her, so I can't give it back anyway.
She said that nonchalantly, like that was a normal thing to do. I was furious, and I told her that that was an heirloom from my late mother and that she needed to return it to us. But instead of showing any remorse, my mother-in-law said,
Oh, really? That was an heirloom from your mother? For an heirloom, that was a very cheap-looking necklace. I'm sure it wasn't even worth that much.
And she started laughing as if to make fun of my late mother. That pushed me over the edge, and I could not forgive her for it. I told her that if she wasn't going to give it back, then I was going to go and discuss this matter with the police. When my mother-in-law heard that, she seemed to be at a loss for words, or so I thought. But it turned out that she had just hung up the phone. That day at night. When my husband came home from work, all of a sudden he barged into the house and started yelling at me.
Hey, Kelly, I just got a phone call from my mom who was crying on the phone. She said that you were bullying her. What on earth did you do to her? What's wrong with you that you would bully my mother like that?
He had the nerve to come at me like this, so I explained to him exactly what had happened between my mother-in-law and my daughter and I. However, even when my husband found out the reality that his mother had stolen my mother's heirloom that was meant to be for my daughter, he continued on, saying,
Anyone that's gonna make my mom cry isn't part of my family. You, get out of my house now!
and he threw his anger at me and tried to kick me out of the house. But at that very moment, all of the emotion that had been bottling up inside of me finally exploded. I went straight to my room and I gathered up my belongings. But then my daughter followed right behind me and said, "Mom, I'm coming with you. We're leaving." And she started gathering her belongings as well. Ashley and I stormed out of the house together, and we decided to stay at a hotel for the time being. I didn't want to go back to that house anymore for a while, and with the encouragement of my daughter and her support, I started preparing for a divorce while also starting to look for a new place for us to live. Right around that time, we were approaching the day that my daughter's college acceptance results would be announced. Ashley and I were both extremely nervous as we opened up the computer and started looking through the acceptance numbers that were listed out on the university admissions screen one after another. And we saw clearly that my daughter's number was listed on the acceptance screen. The moment that we saw that, Ashley and I jumped up and hugged each other, and we cried tears of happiness. I was so proud of her because she had worked so hard for this. Now that my daughter had gotten accepted into the college of her dreams, we decided to move to a place closer to the university, which was going to be far away from our old house, so that my daughter would be able to easily go to school. We went to a real estate agency and asked them to find a good listing for us. I was still working full-time, so we didn't need to worry too much financially. Then the real estate agent told us that they found an apartment that was the perfect size for the two of us. So we decided to go and have a look at it. When my daughter and I went for the viewing together, we both really liked it. And so just like that, we signed a contract and we had a new place to live together. It was a distance that was still easy for me to get to work, and I had saved up a lot of money from working over the years. So we were able to move in immediately. At the exact same time as moving in, I sent my husband the divorce papers in the mail. I was on cloud 9, and my heart was singing at this beginning to the new chapter in my life. However, not long after that, I received a phone call from Jonathan for the first time since Ashley and I had left the house. I assumed that this was about the divorce papers that I had sent him, so I answered the phone, but Jonathan sounded like he was panicking.
Hey, Kelly, do you know what happened to my company car? Where is it?
He suddenly started asking me that, and when I told him that I had no idea what he was talking about.
I just went out to do a little bit of shopping, but when I came home, the car keys and the car are gone. That was the company car. If my company finds out about this, I'm going to be in so much trouble. Please, you have to help me find it, please.
In an instant, I suspected my mother-in-law was behind this, but at the same time, I didn't think that she would go so far as to steal a car from her own son. So I told Jonathan that his best bet was to report this to the police and ask for their help, and I brushed him off. I knew that at Jonathan's company, taking company cars out of the company premises and using them for any matters outside of work are strictly prohibited. So if they found out that Jonathan had a company car parked at home, and on top of that it was stolen from his house, it was undoubtedly going to be a huge problem. Because of that, in the beginning, Jonathan was really against reporting this to the police, but he kept begging for my help. But eventually he seemed to realize that it would still be better than not being able to find the car at all, so Jonathan was left with no choice but to report it to the police. When they began their investigation on the lost car, they immediately found the culprit. And just as I had initially expected, my mother-in-law was behind it. Apparently her motivation was that her friend had recently bought a new car and she was jealous of them, so she stole her son's car. That was the only reason, and it was so selfish and stupid. My husband already had his own car in the house, but apparently my mother-in-law saw that there was another separate car parked, and she assumed that I had bought a new car and that it belonged to me. That's why her misunderstanding led to her stealing the car. And not only did she steal the car, but they discovered that she had also stolen the laptop that was in the car and sold it. That was actually my husband's work laptop, which was filled with confidential company information. With this incident, not only did Jonathan's company find out that he had used the company car for his own personal matters and taking it off premises without permission, he also lost the company laptop that was full of confidential information. And he was fired from his job. My mother-in-law was sued by my ex-husband's company, and she ended up having to pay an extremely high settlement fee for the cost of damages. After that, apparently Jonathan cut off all ties with his mother, and he tried to come apologize to me about everything until now. He also said that he would make his mother give me back everything that she had taken from me and Ashley, and then he begged me to get back together with him. However, when my belongings were being stolen over and over again and I asked for his help multiple times, Jonathan never once even lifted a finger to help me, and I was already over him. There was no way that I was going to get back together with a man like that. His mother agreed to return everything that she stole from us, and for things that she wasn't able to return because she didn't personally have them anymore, she would have to pay us back the full value of the items. On top of that, Jonathan said his mother would have to bear the full cost of my daughter's university school fees. Under these conditions, I agreed not to sue my mother-in-law for the theft that she had repeatedly victimized my daughter and me with over the years. As for my mother-in-law, after paying the full settlement fee to Jonathan's company for the loss of confidential information and laptop and the incident with the car, she lost all the money that she had saved. And if I were to sue her on top of that, it would have been a disaster not only for her, but for Jonathan as well, because he knew that he would have to shoulder some of those payments for his mother. For that reason, Jonathan accepted all of these conditions that I gave to them. And I could tell that he was in a panic to find a new job as soon as possible. After he got fired from his job so abruptly, Jonathan was struggling for money, and so he ultimately ended up selling our old family house and moving into a tiny, old, run-down apartment in order to save as much money as he could. Given his personality and his lack of achievements, Jonathan struggled to find another part-time job. But he needed to find something immediately to make money, so he picked up multiple part-time jobs from morning until night. And without missing a single payment, every single month he was paying my daughter's college tuition fees and depositing it straight into my account. For that, I was grateful, and my daughter was able to go to college without any worries. As for things that his mother had stolen from my daughter and I, unfortunately not even half of those items were returned back to us. It turns out that my mother-in-law had been selling them or regifting them to other people, and we weren't able to track down many of the items. However, thankfully we were able to receive my mother's heirloom necklace that she had given to Ashley, and both my daughter and I were relieved to at least get such an important item back into our hands. Over the years, I had been keeping close track of all the items that my mother-in-law had stolen from my daughter and I, just in case we would ever be able to get justice like this for those items. So I used that as my base for my mother-in-law and ex-husband to track down all of the stolen items, and with that list, we were also able to calculate the market value of the items that we weren't going to get back. When we added it all up, it actually ended up in quite a large sum that my mother-in-law was going to owe us. Of course, my mother-in-law did pay it to us, and with that money, I was able to cover the cost of the hotel that my daughter and I were staying in when we first left the house. And we were also able to cover the majority of the moving costs. Thanks to that, I was able to not dig into my savings too much, and Ashley and I were able to continue living comfortably in our new apartment without financial worries. After everything and all of the thefts that my mother-in-law had committed, she was, of course, arrested by the police. Word spread around through the relatives quickly that she was taken in by the police and charged for theft. And nobody wanted anything to do with her anymore. My ex-mother-in-law was practically disowned by all of the family members. She didn't have anybody that she could rely on anymore, nor did she have any money left in her name, and even Jonathan had disowned her as his mother. And so my ex-mother-in-law was left wandering aimlessly, without a penny to her name, and without a job or a place to live or a family. Without any money to survive, my ex-mother-in-law had no choice but to let go of the house that she had lived in for so many years. Currently, I heard that my ex-mother-in-law is homeless, and the rumors that I heard were that she's living in the park. However, even after she became homeless and started living in the park, apparently she started stealing things from her fellow homeless park mates. And that she was causing trouble, and now she's stuck hopping from park to park after getting kicked out by the homeless groups in each park. After my divorce from Jonathan, I happened to see my ex-mother-in-law just once in the park, but she had lost so much weight that I barely recognized her. I didn't even see the shadow of the woman that I once knew, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything to her. So without saying a word, I ignored her and went on with my life. As for my daughter, Ashley and I, we had gotten used to our life in our new apartment together. We're living happily and freely as Ashley goes to school and I continue working full-time. Ever since we separated from my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law, I was, of course, feeling a lot less stress. But I was surprised to see that my daughter seemed less stressed as well, and she became even more positive and happy than she was before. Now that my daughter was a college student and it meant that she was a lot more independent, these days I spend some of the money that I've been working hard to save to go on vacations with my friends or take some time for myself. I am really enjoying this newfound freedom. From now on, I'm not going to let people sling me around in my own life. I want to live a happy, peaceful life together with my daughter, where we can both be genuinely happy.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.